Good morning. During Unit 6, what we're going to do, we're going to be talking about equations. We're going to be talking about graphing equations. We're going to be looking at how those relate to tables. And some of the things, we're going to be tying in a lot of things that we have already looked at this year. And one of the important pieces of this is knowing the difference between the independent and the dependent variables. So that's where we're going to start. An independent variable is a quantity that stands alone, there we go, and is not changed by other quantities. Most often this is the x variable. Whichever number x represents, this is usually the independent variable, and it should be. The dependent variable is a quantity that changes. It shouldn't say that stands. It should say that changes depending on other quantities or another quantity as the result of the rule. And we're going to look at the rules here in a minute. And most often this is the y variable. This is very closely related to function or ratio tables if you've done those in elementary school. And you don't have to write this part. This is just for your information. But I would write everything over here in the white area, just so you have some decent notes. Okay? So we're going to look at an example real quick. Every 10 days, Anna adds $20 to her savings account. If she saves for 80 days, how much money would she have in her account? Now, so this is a math problem, and we need to figure this out. But what we really need to figure out is the independent and dependent variables. So every 10 days, so days is a variable, and money is a variable. Anna adds to her account. So what we're looking at is which one is the dependent and which one is the independent. We're going to write an equation for this. We're going to make a table, and we're going to identify the variables. First thing is, let's identify which one is dependent and which one is independent. Which one depends on the other? Okay, so what we're going to say is that days is the independent variable because the days doesn't depend on anything else. Does that make sense? So we're going to make days the independent variable, and money is going to be the dependent variable. It means the amount of money depends on the number of days. Okay, at day 10, she has put $20 into her account. On day 20, she has put 10 more days. She has put $40 into her account. On day 30, she has put $60 into her account. If we keep going with this pattern, if she goes 60 days, what we're going to find is she's going to put $120 into her account. And we can look at these and go, how did I get from X to Y? Well, my Y value equals my X value times 2. Okay, 10 times 2 is 20. Okay, my Y value, 40, equals my X value times 2. 20 times 2 is 30 times 2 is 60. 60 times 2 is 120. So the rule is, or the relationship, the rule can also be called the relationship, is times 2. Okay? The rule or the relationship is multiplied by 2. X is the days that she saves money. Y is the money that is saved on those days. So we could say in words, as X increases by 10, Y increases by 20. So this is what the table is going to look like. So we have made the table. We have identified the variables where we said the X is the independent, so days is independent. Money is the dependent, so Y is dependent, is the money. The equation is going to be what we talked about over here. My Y value equals my X value times 2. And the way we write that is y equals 2x. Okay. So when we're talking about independent and dependent variables, when you're dealing with tables, X is always going to be on the top, and it's always going to be independent. And Y is always going to be on the bottom. It's always going to be the dependent. X is always going to be on the left because they go in alphabetical order. So alphabetical order, X, Y. Alphabetical order, X, Y. X is going to be your independent, and Y is, that's horrible, independent. And Y is going to be your dependent. When we look at a graph, the X is your independent values. So we have, in this case, if we look at, so this graph does not match what we just did, but these would be our independent values on the x-axis right here. The y-axis would have our dependent values, which are the ones that are going to change based on the x-axis. Okay, so this is dependent. This is independent. Now, here's another thing that I'd like to tell my students. In order to remember which one is which, X can stand by itself. And Y needs some help. Because X already has 2 feet and Y only has 1. So Y would fall over without X's help. Which is another way of saying that X is independent. Sorry, I'm going to do that in a different color. X is independent and Y is dependent. All right, now you're going to do the following exercises, just identifying which item depends on the other. And in one of the exercises, all you're doing is just determining, okay, based on the word problem, which one depends on the other. Okay, y'all. And the other one is a little bit more about the graphs and the tables.